us, you're in for a treat today. We have a special introductory class to the Atlantic Theater Company. Sam Gonzalez, who's here joining us, he's gonna be teaching you along the way, along with a couple actors as classmates, if you will. And then Chris Booth from the Atlantic Theater Company is gonna also be co-running the show. So just as people are filing in, we got 240 now, and we'll see that growing over the next couple minutes. I'll hand it over to Chris. So Chris, feel free. I'm here if you guys need me. And thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you in particular to these four here for taking the show. Excited to see what you have in store. And Chris, all you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Jules Booth, and I'm the Director of Admissions at the Atlantic Acting School. Before we get started today, I'm going to give you all just a little history. Atlantic was founded over 35 years ago by a group of NYU acting students who were tasked with, quote, creating their own work. And it was through this challenge that they developed an acting technique that we now know as practical aesthetics. Since then, Atlantic's aim has been singular, and that is to empower simple and honest storytelling that fosters a greater understanding of our shared world. Atlantic is a family of artists dedicated to exploring essential truths, be that on stage or remotely through the Atlantic Theater Company, which many of you may be familiar with, or in a class at the Atlantic Acting School. As producers, presenters, and educators, we are driven by the belief that the performing arts can challenge and transform our ways of thinking and urge us to reflect on our role in society. Now, our presenter today, Sam Gonzalez, is an alumni of the Atlantic Acting School, as well as being a current faculty member. And he's going to lead two students, Ian and Lily, through a demonstration of practical aesthetics. But before we get started, I just want to give you a little bit of context about what you're going to be seeing here. At Atlantic, we don't believe that the job of the actor is to be a, quote, good actor, nor do we believe that the job of the actor is to, quote, avoid being a bad actor. We believe that the job of the actor is to tell the truth, to honestly, simply, truthfully, and bravely deliver the story to the audience. But how do you do that? How do you leave behind your own preconceived notions of the work that you're doing? How do you leave behind your ego? How do you leave behind your idea of perfection? And how do you embrace the moment that you're currently in? Well, Sam, Ian, and Lily are going to show you that. So with that being said, Sam, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to feel your presence through my computer screen. My name is Sam Gonzalez, and as Chris said, I'm a faculty member at the Atlantic Acting School. So today, we'll have a bit of a chat about practical aesthetics. Whenever I dive into the beginning of practical aesthetics with anyone who hasn't heard about it for the first time, the thing that I think is most important to begin the conversation with is, why do we train? Why do we as actors train? And what is the skill that we're trying to attain? These are sorts of questions that start to elude us a little bit in the world of acting. This is so because there are many people who don't train, who don't go into training, who just get up and feel it out, do the show. It feels good. They go on camera and it feels right. And so the question is, like, why do we train? Why do we feel like we need technique for those of us who feel like we do? Technique is something that we need or can hold on to in the days, especially when we don't feel like doing this work, or when we don't feel like we can actually put all of ourselves into it. We have something to fall back on. And so we ask ourselves this question of, what is the skill that we're trying to attain here? What is the skill that we can get better at? Again, like I said, this eludes us actors because it's not as clear as it is for, say, a musician or a dancer who has their scales or their exercises at the bar. The question is, what is the skill that we can work towards attaining and honing and habitualizing as we work? If we ask ourselves, what is the job of the actor, as Chris was starting to get into, if we were to take the definition that Konstantin Stanislavski gave us, the job of the actor is to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances. To live truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And so the question becomes, what is the skill that we can continue to hone in order to do that consistently? And what we believe is that that skill is the ability to be private in public. The ability to be unself-conscious, vulnerable, and open, completely open, sharing the depths and the heights of you while a dark room of coughing and candy unwrapping strangers is looking at you, while, well, as is the case these days, as a bunch of non-video participants are looking at you through their computer screens. The ability to be private in public. Most of you probably already know this, but the number one fear is public speaking in most humans, followed closely by the number two fear, which is death. So it stands to reason that most people would rather be the person in the coffin than the person giving the eulogy. This sort of thought actually brings me some kind of comfort sometimes, because it means that for me, just as being an actor, this want to be on stage, to be seen by others, inherently makes me a bit of a freak. And it makes, I guess, you a bit of a freak too, if you're watching. So welcome, freaks. Let's get to work. So how do we combat this fear? Even if we are these freaks, we have this fear, this inherent fear that is within all of us, this fear of being seen by others and being vulnerable while others are looking at us. How do we combat it? If I had a big banner above me that sort of told our motto of practical aesthetics, of what we do at the Atlantic, it would say, think before you act, so you can act before you think. Think before you act, so you can act before you think. This is sort of at the cornerstone of what it is that we do in our work. How can we use our intellect, our common sense, and our bravery to look at a piece of text and find a choice that we can make, so that when we go on stage or on set, we can act that choice without thinking about it, without going back into our heads. It is the act of going back into our heads that engages that ego, that engages that feeling of, oh no, don't do that. That'll be humiliating, that'll be awful. That thought that goes inside of our head, that's the thing that we're trying to combat. So we say, think before you act, so you can act before you think. If we're to break that down even further, this comes down to the two main tenets of practical aesthetics, which we call action and moment. Action and moment. If we're to break down that sentence, think before you act, so you can act before you think. If we take that first part, think before you act, that is action. How do we take a look at a piece of text and distill it down to a playable choice? An action. What is action? Let's define that word. It's a pretty simple word, but let's say some words that sort of define action. A verb. It is what you do. It is something that you can use your will to engage in. It is action. It is, as we define it, it is a goal and our pursuit towards that goal. Action. And then we have moment. Moment is not something you do. Moment is something that we just allow for. The moment is time. It is space. It is what is now. Right now is a moment. And right now is another one. And right now is another one. Moment. It is something that just happens. And so the question is, how do we play action in a way that allows us to give in to the moment and to acknowledge the truth of the moment, the truth that is this very moment, right here and right now. Not what will be in the scene, not what has happened before, but here and now. Action and moment. When it comes to moment, there are exercises that we do at the Atlantic and in every acting technique that have their different ways of engaging with the moment. For us, the main attention is, how do we put our attention outside of ourselves, and more importantly, onto the person with whom we are playing, onto our scene partner? How do we take our attention away from the inside of our brains and there? Look at that person. That is how we achieve moment. The question of action is what we will look on for the rest of our time together. I am a script analysis teacher, specifically at the Atlantic, and so this is my bread and butter. It's what I love. How we find action is by analyzing a script, and we ask ourselves 4 simple but crucial questions in order to find for ourselves a playable action. And so let's ask ourselves these 4 questions. I'm going to take pauses in case you guys are writing things down and it's helpful for you to write things down. I will take pauses and repeat myself as much as I can. the first question we ask ourselves is, what is my character literally doing in the scene? What is my character literally doing in the scene? Second question, what does my character want the other character to do in the scene? What does my character want the other character to do in the scene? The third question, what is my action? What is my action? And the fourth question is, what is that action like to me? It's as if, ... What is that action like to me? It's as if, fill in the blank. So that's it. Those are the 4 questions that we ask ourselves when looking at any piece of text. So let's go through them, shall we? They seem simple, but they get a little, well, there's a lot that can be found inside of them. So we ask ourselves this first question, what is my character literally doing in the scene? Why do we ask this question first? This is why I think it's incredibly important. We take the word literally, very literally, as opposed to the way that people use it these days, which is to say figuratively. When we say literal, we mean actually what is in the words. So for example, if we were to analyze the scene that is me talking to you right now, if there were a little stenographer in the corner typing out everything I've said, and we were to analyze it, what am I literally doing in the scene? Sam is literally talking. Yes. Can we say more? Yes. Sam is literally talking via Zoom. Yes. True. Can we say more? Perhaps. Sam is literally talking to guests of Backstage via Zoom. Great. What else can we say? Sam is literally talking to guests of Backstage via Zoom about the philosophy and practice of practical aesthetics. True. And so if we were to look at that script, the script of everything that I've said encompasses itself in that one statement. That is what I'm literally doing in the scene. The reason we ask this question first is because it puts us in perfect sync, in perfect collaboration with the playwright or screenwriter. We make sure that the answer to this question is uninterpretive. We as artists, we love to interpret. We love to take a look at a script and already impose on it our ideas. As we read anything, the little movie version of it starts to play inside our head. And that's a great thing. But we want to make sure that whatever choice we end up making as an actor is coming from a perfect collaboration with just what the playwright has written, so that we are honoring the playwright's intention. What is my character literally doing in the scene? So we've analyzed Sam. Let's look at Romeo, shall we? Romeo and Juliet. Hopefully you're all familiar. We have the balcony scene, one of the most famous love scenes in all dramatic literature. Romeo says, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, are far more fair than she." He goes on, he's in love. If we're just to analyze that bit, what is Romeo literally doing in the scene? But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. I guess we could say literally that Romeo is literally telling Juliet to come out and outshine the moon with her beauty, far more fair than she. Does that make sense? It is a literal statement. It tells us exactly what the character is doing or saying in the scene. Both in screenwriting as well as in playwriting, most of our plot is happening through dialogue. Most of what moves the story forward is what's being said. So when we ask the question, what is my character literally doing in the scene? We mean, what is my character literally doing or talking about in the scene? What is the content of the conversation? Sam is literally talking to guests of Backstage via Zoom about the philosophy and practice of practical aesthetics. Romeo is literally telling Juliet to come out and outshine the moon with her beauty. What is my character literally doing in the scene? So we've done the good and hard work of answering that first question, and we move on to the second question. What does my character want the other character to do in the scene? As you can see, with the way that this question is phrased, we at the Atlantic are obsessed, as I said, with putting our attention outside of ourselves and onto the other person. This question already starts to show that. What does my character want the other character to do in this scene? So for example, if I'm playing a bank robber goes into a bank, goes up to the teller and says, "Give me the money. Give me all the money." What is the bank robber literally doing? The bank robber is literally robbing the bank. What does the bank robber want? We could say money, we could say security, we could say wants to feed his family of four. There are so many things that we could say, but the question of this scene is, what does the bank robber want the teller to do in the scene? The bank robber wants the teller to give him or her the money. If we were to analyze me again, what does Sam want the guests of Backstage to do in this scene? Sam wants the guests of Backstage to be inspired by practical aesthetics. Sam wants the guests of Backstage to leave informed about this new acting technique. What does my character want the other character to do in this scene? Not in general, not before, not after, in this scene, here and now. Romeo, what does Romeo want Juliet to do in the scene? Romeo wants Juliet to climb down to him. Romeo wants Juliet to grace the moon, the stars, and himself with her undying beauty. We can let ourselves be as poetic as Shakespeare there. The way I like to think of the want is that it is our opportunity to sing from the character's soul. If the literal is a place where we do not interpret, where we are talking about the literal words, the want is where our artistry meets itself with what the words are saying. I like to think of it as if the character were sitting in that room, in the corner of the room where I am, and I were to read out the want for the character, they'd be like, yes, exactly right. Thank you, finally someone understands me. What does my character want the other character to do in the scene? Let it sing from the character's soul. Once we've answered this question, we bring ourselves to the third question. What is my action? What is my action? Now this is it. We're going to talk about this for a little while. This is the big enchilada when it comes to practical aesthetics. What is my action? Before we actually talk about action though, let us talk about the difference between the first two questions that we just asked and this third question. The first question, what is my character literally doing in the scene? The second question, what does my character want the other character to do in the scene? The third question, what is my action? The first two questions are about the character. They are about the story. They are plot driven. The third question is a massive leap that we make. It is not about the character. It is about you, the actor. It is what I, Sam, am going to do. It is the goal that I'm going to pursue on stage in order to tell the story. This massive leap comes from a very controversial thing that David Mamet said when he and William H. Macy were working on this technique in the 80s, which is that there is no such thing as character. It's a scary thing to have to say to a bunch of actors, but I just said it. There is no such thing as character. What we mean by that, let's unpack that for a moment. What we mean by that is there is literally no Romeo. He's not actually a person. He is words on a page. Beautiful words on a page that convey a narrative. When we take those words and we find an action for them, and I, Sam, play that action and bring my humanity to it with these words, an illusion is built. The illusion is Romeo. Romeo, a result of text, Shakespeare's text, and my humanity. What is my action? So let me do this for a moment. I'm going to put this in the chat. I know folks are using the chat, but I'm going to write something in the chat right now. Action. action, to put someone in their place, to inspire someone to greatness, to get a gold star, to get someone to put their faith in me, to get a truce, to teach a simple lesson. These are all actions. An action, as we said, is a goal and the pursuit towards that goal. The thing that we are very specific of with actions, with what we call actions in practical aesthetics, is that they always have their test in the other person, which is to say that the achievability of this action is vested not in myself, but in the other person. To inspire someone to greatness, I can't do that on my own. The person themselves must be inspired to greatness. To teach a simple lesson, I'm not done until the person has been taught, until the person knows. To get a truce, I can't get a truce on my own. It requires the other person as well. As you can hear, this is universal language. This is language that is probably familiar to you. And when I read any of these actions to you, they feel familiar. They are, like I said, essential. They are, in their essence, just human behavior. If I say any one of these actions to you, you start to understand it pretty immediately, and you understand how you might begin to go about it. It is where you and the character intersect. If we think of the want as the problem, then the action is the solution. If the want states what your character is needing in the scene, then the action states how you, the actor, are going to go about getting it for them. Action. It must have its test in the other person. It must be completable. You should be able to see the other person and notice when you have achieved this action. It is actually possible. Like I said a moment ago, I said it is where you and the character intersect. What I mean by that is you hopefully will have the luxury of playing many characters in your career, many of whom hopefully have life experiences and go through trials and tribulations that you have not in your life, nor will you, hopefully. For example, we take Medea from Greek tragedy, who has slaughtered her own children and shown them to her husband for what he's done, for his infidelity. My hope is that no one on this Zoom call has done so, has slaughtered their own children and presented them to their loved ones. And so the question becomes, how do I, this actor, portray that? We find an essential choice that tells us what is happening for Medea. If we're to look at Medea, and she presents her children to her husband, to get someone to see the damage that they have done, to get someone to take responsibility, to get someone to face the consequences. This is the action. Now, those terms, to get someone to take responsibility, I can see myself doing that. To get someone to face the consequences, I can see myself doing that. These are actions that I can play, and I can play that with Medea's text. And the illusion that is built is Medea. The action is where I and the character intersect. Action. Once we have thought of an action for ourselves, once we have found ourselves an action that feels exciting and fun to do, that is in line with the playwright's intentions, that has its test in the other person, that is calling on the other person's free will, it is asking the other person to do something, we ask ourselves the fourth and final question, which is, what is that action like to me? It's as if, ... What is that action like to me? This is how we personalize the action. We think for ourselves an as if, what we call an as if, which is a hypothetical scenario, something that could conceivably happen in your life as it is right now, where you would play this action fully. This as if becomes a mnemonic device. It becomes a rehearsal tool that you use to train yourself to understand what it feels like to pursue this action. This is easier to show than it is to tell. So to further this conversation about the as if and how we use it for an action, I'm going to invite our friends Lily and Ian to join us and help. Hi, Ian.
Hello.
Lily. Thank you for joining us. So I have given Ian and Lily a little 6-line scene, one that I usually write at the beginning of any semester with a group of students, and then we'll play around with it. So let me, first of all, put the text of this little scene into the chat. Great. Before we go any further with your analyses, guys, would you mind just saying these lines by rote, without inflection or any sort of choices? Let's just hear you guys say the lines so everyone can hear them.
I don't have any of your stuff here.
Can we just talk for a minute?
We don't have anything left to talk about.
I just wanted to apologize.
I don't think it was your fault.
I wish I felt the same way.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Great, lovely. Let's begin with Hannah. Let's see how you analyzed this scene, Lily.
Beautiful. I'm going to put mine in the chat also, so
Great.
people can take a look at it. So my literal, I wrote, Hannah is literally talking to Xavier about how she doesn't blame Xavier for anything that happened between them. My want is Hannah wants Xavier to accept the fact that the decision he made means that they can't be together. And my action is to get someone to swallow a bitter pill.
Fantastic. Beautiful, Lily. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's take a look at how we play with to get someone to swallow a bitter pill, shall we?
Yes.
So you have an as if for this action, is that right?
I do.
Great, lovely. So let's take a look at you talking out this as if. So what Lily is going to do now, she has an as if. She has something that could conceivably happen in her life in which she would get someone to swallow a bitter pill. In a moment, I'm going to go away and I'm going to ask her to talk out this as if to Ian. She will be speaking to him as though she's speaking to this person in her as if, attempting to get this person to swallow this bitter pill. So let's take a look at it, shall we? I'm going to go away. I'll give you a go. So for now, just take a look at Ian. As if, go.
I think you need to soften. If you really want this guy to be your friend, you need to drop whatever. Don't roll your eyes. You need to drop whatever hard, angry Scorpio armor you have built up to let him in. You know? How do you expect someone to get to know who you really are if you won't show them who you really are?
Okay, great, fantastic, fantastic. Let me stop you there, Lily. Beautiful, thank you. Beautiful. So as you guys are already seeing, she's talking about this other person that we do not know. It's someone personal in her life that she's talking to. But as we see, she's tying this as if and the pursuit of this action to Ian. When Ian rolled his eyes, she made a comment about it. She is in the moment with Ian, using this as if to pursue the action, making sure to always respond off of whatever the behavior is that Ian is giving her. Beautiful, Lily. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at your analysis, shall we, Ian?
Sure.
Great. Let's see it.
All right. So I have, for my literal, Xavier is literally apologizing to Hannah. For my want, Xavier wants Hannah to give him a chance to redeem himself, and as an action, to get mercy.
To get mercy. Okay, great. And you have an as if for this action.
Sure do.
Great. Let's take a look at it, shall we? Take a look at Lily. As if, go.
I can't have you mad at me too. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I need you to believe me, okay? I didn't mean to. It slipped my mind, and I'm really sorry. Please, everyone else is pissed at me, and I need you to be on my side. Just one person, and you're the person who's supposed to be there.
Okay, great. Let me stop you there. Awesome, Ian. This is great. you can share as little or as much of this as you feel comfortable with. But can I ask you, what are you asking this person to do?
I'm asking this person to basically not be angry with me for the thing that I have done.
Okay, great. So taking it away from the negative of not be angry, what are we asking them to actively do?
I guess comfort me.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. This time we'll look at both of your as-ifs, and let's begin with that, yeah? Even if it feels weird, let's begin by asking for just that.
Yeah.
So we have the ask at the very beginning of the as-if. Great. So in a moment, what I'm going to ask Ian and Lily to do is to now talk out both of their as-ifs at the same time to one another. So what you're going to see is going to look a little weird, because these are two people with two completely different scenarios talking about two totally different things. What they are doing is not responding to what the other person is saying, but responding to how the other person is saying it. They are responding to each other's behavior. And we are going to get to take a good look at how these actions look when they are in conversation with each other. Shall we give it a go, guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go for it. Take a look at each other and breathe, because breathing helps. Both as-ifs. Go.
I need you to be on my side.
You need to soften yourself a little bit.
I'm really sorry, okay? And I'm sorry for that I did this. It was an accident, but I need you to be on my side with this.
Why don't you show this guy who you really are instead of this thing that you're pretending to be?
I'm so sorry. Please just be here with me, okay?
I don't want you to feel bad about this. I'm really not trying to hurt you. But if you want to know why he is distancing himself, it's because you won't let him in. You have to let him in.
It was an accident. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I'm sorry.
Okay, great. Let me stop you guys there. Fantastic. Beautiful work, guys. We'll do it again, and we'll take ourselves into the scene. One thing that I want to say to both of you as we do it again is allow yourself to be a little less polite.
Great.
As soon as you feel the impulse to speak, as soon as whatever the other person does gives you a feeling of, oh, I got to get in there, then get in there. Yeah?
Okay.
Go ahead and interrupt each other.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to ask them to talk out both of their as-ifs just as they did. And at some point, they're going to hear my voice call scene. The only thing that changes at that point is the words that they say. As opposed to the words of the as-if that they have been using, they will substitute it for the words of the scene, which they already have memorized. They need not actually think about it. It's been habitualized. So let's take a look. Take a look at each other and breathe. Both as-ifs. Go.
You gotta be nicer.
I know, I need you to back me up on this.
You've gotta be nicer.
But look, I'm already beating myself up for this, and you're supposed to be there to pick me up when I'm down.
You can't talk about how you're
I'm sorry.
Push everyone away. That's not how it works. You have
It was an accident. Look, I'm gonna be kicking myself for this for fucking ever.
You aren't listening. You're not listening to what I'm saying.
Scene.
I don't have any of your stuff here.
But can we just talk for a minute?
You have nothing left to talk about.
I wanted to apologize.
I don't blame you for anything.
I wish I felt the same.
Okay, great. Thank you, folks. Thank you. That was exciting. Now, of course, this is the part where I wish it was an actual class and I could hear what everyone has to say about it. But since there's 311 of you and I can't see you, I will say what I felt, which was that I heard these lines in a way that I did not envision them when I first read the scene. I feel like what this allowed for was you guys to take your time and let every line be a different opportunity to get your action. How did that feel for the two of you, if I could ask?
It felt good. It felt pretty much exactly what you just said, where you have this idea of what it's going to sound like when you first read it. You're like, ah, yes, this is what this line means. And when you open your mouth after doing the as-ifing, you kind of have to let that go and just let whatever comes out of your mouth come out and go with it. And it felt very much like that.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. So fun. What's exciting too about this is that it gives it the opportunity to be different every time, to be organic every time in a way that feels honest. So could we actually do it again and see what happens this time?
Sure. You want us to go from as-ifing again?
Yeah, we'll start from the as-ifing again.
Sure.
Great. So take a look at each other. Breathe. As if, go.
Can you just give me a hug and tell me it's going to be okay?
Why can't you just
Please.
open up? Why do you meet
You're supposed
everyone?
to be on my side.
Why do you meet everyone with this intimidating facade?
Look, I'm so sorry. I can't have you yelling at me for this.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not trying to be an asshole. But if you want to know why people are spacing themselves
We're
from
a
you,
team.
because of that.
You
Scene.
and me, we're a team.
Scene.
I don't have any of your stuff here.
Can we just talk for a minute?
I mean, we have nothing left to talk about.
I just wanted to apologize.
I don't blame you for anything.
I wish I felt the same.
Okay, great. Can we go right back into it again? And this time, let's not let ourselves lose any of that momentum, that speed that we're finding in the as-if game. Let's see what it does to it, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at each other. We'll start with the as-ifs. Breathe. As if, go.
Be nicer. Be open. Be welcoming.
I can't have you attacking me as well. Okay. Everyone else has pissed me, but not you. You're coming at me really strong, and I'm already stressed about it.
I'm not trying to do anything that's going to upset you, but you have to understand.
You're just coming on so strong.
You have to understand what other people are getting.
I'm sorry.
Scene.
Okay?
I don't have any of your stuff here.
Can we just talk for a minute?
We don't have anything left to talk about.
I just wanted to apologize.
I don't blame you for anything.
I wish I felt the same.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Interesting how every time, and I think this is actually I mean, you guys took my notes so beautifully, but I feel like it gets so much heavier as we get to the end that it's hard to muck through the end. Yeah, how did that feel for the team?
Yeah, no, exactly what you're saying. And it's just fun reacting off of someone else and, whatever she's giving me. So when we're speeding it up, I do feel that weight as we get to the end, and it's hard to get out that last line.
Beautiful. What's great is here's the thing is this is a pardon my French, but a shitty little scene that was written in some class someday by a couple of students. And as we move forward in our careers as actors, we will come across writing that is not Shakespeare, that is not a Romeo in the balcony scene, right? And the truth is that when we live in this world where there is acting everywhere, every little screen that we look at has so much content. There is more content now than there ever has been. A heck of a lot of acting looks like a hell of a lot of more acting. But the only thing that will ever always be unique is yourself. And I feel like I'm seeing the two of you bring yourselves. I'm seeing Ian, I'm seeing Lily, speaking from their own honesty. And when we add these words, we get Hannah, we get Xavier. And we get this history between the two of you that is not necessarily true, but it's because we're seeing your actions in conversation with each other. Mm-hmm. Beautiful work, guys. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Lily. I hope everyone in their ether will give them a little round of applause for their work. I appreciate it. Great. So, folks, that is pretty much everything that I want to go through with everyone in terms of an introduction for today. So I do want to leave a good amount of time, or the rest of this time, for questions. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. That was amazing. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Lily. So we've got some questions. Before we get into the questions, just please, everyone, if you could put the questions into the Q&A function, so that way they don't get lost in the chat. I'd really, really appreciate it. And then the other thing is, a few of you asked some questions which were very specific to your careers and pathways into your careers. This really isn't the right environment for us to address those questions because that's your career and your path. But given time, maybe myself and Sam can stay a little bit after to address some of those questions. But with that being said, Sam, our first question is, what should come first in an actor's process? Breakdown of script or memorizing lines by rote? And that comes from William Cruz from San Antonio, Texas. I don't really know if William is really from San Antonio. I'm just making that part up.
Great. Hey, William. A great question. I suppose when you mean breakdown of script, perhaps I think you mean the analysis process. I guess, like, I will say those two can come hand in hand. But the thing that I will say, and this I have found from teaching as well as from working as an actor, is memorizing lines by rote is incredibly frustrating and annoying, and will never be the most luxurious part of the process as an actor. It is the work that we have to do. But because it is the work that we have to do, it must be done. It must be gotten out of the way before anything else can happen. I forget whoever it was that told me that whoever is off book by the first day of rehearsal for a production will be the best at opening night. Any time that you spend not yet memorized while you're in rehearsal is a moment that you spend not actually rehearsing, but still working on memorizing your lines. It's the kind of work that needs to get done before anything else gets done. So very much a priority, I would say.
Yeah, and Sam, can I jump in with a quick little analogy? I like to sometimes think about learning lines in rote. It's kind of like, for anyone here who's a singer or does musicals, it's sort of like the 3 lives of the song. When you are learning the song, there's the learning of it kind of like marking in your score where you're going to breathe and the sort of technical aspect of it. There is the doing of the song where you kind of know all this, but you're still very much actively in your head thinking about the technical part. And then there's the third life of the song, the living of the song, where you understand the words internally so well that you're able to make all these discoveries. And I think this may also help answer a couple of questions that people are asking in the chat. What it ultimately does, I believe, is it allows you to divorce yourself from the words so that you're no longer playing the words.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my 2 cents. So Don from Racine, once again, I'm just making up where you're from. When you have a playwright who is a first-time director, how can an actor help them to let go of their character and allow you to make choices? In other words, do the actor work?
Oh, wow, what a fantastic question. It's such an interesting thing to have to navigate when you have a playwright who's also a director. I mean, the truth is that it's a case-by-case scenario. It depends on this person that you're working with. It really is such a case-by-case scenario. The hope is that you have a playwright who is interested to see what choices you bring to their text that allow them to divorce themselves from their idea of what this character has looked like in their head, so that you can illuminate something that they probably haven't found yet. I think the reason that practical aesthetics is actually fantastic for this is because it starts itself, again, like we said, with the literal, with something that is in perfect collaboration with the playwright. So we make sure that whatever choices we make at their core are inspired solely by what the playwright has written. So that whatever character is illuminated there is one that the playwright can get on board with, even though they might not have seen certain particular moments unfolding in their head, but that's the character that they're seeing. Those are the choices that they're seeing. That is the want that they are seeing. At the end of the day, it's about that playwright director. They are 2 people or that 1 person, and you being on the same page as to what your character wants, what is at the heart of their desire, so that you can explore what it looks like in the world of action, and they can get on board with it. Easier said than done. Again, like I said, case by case, but yeah.
My real brief 2 cents, Sam, as a playwright, I can tell you, playwrights love talking about their work. Boy, do we love talking about our work. So if you're having what I will call a concern about where the playwright and director's job ends and your job as an actor begins, just sit down and talk to them as the playwright. And you'll, hopefully they're open to the conversation. But yeah, ask them about their work. They will never shut up about it. And from there, you can learn a lot about what you believe your character should be doing.
And it's only just more inspiration for you. So it's a fantastic conversation to have. Yeah.
Let's see. The next question is, I may have to interpret a little bit of this question, but the question is from Sarah. So it is like interpretation. I think she asked this while you're going through the literal or the want. So I will interpret that question about interpretation however
I'm
you
going to
want to say it.
interpret that question about interpretation by saying this, which is that the literal is where we do not interpret. The literal is our foundation. If I find that when we interpret, when we allow our choices to come more from like the little movie version that's playing inside of our heads, we don't have a sound foundation that is based on what's actually written. The literal is where we do not interpret. The want is where we do. The want is, as I said, it's where we can let ourselves sing from the character's soul. It's where we can see what our artistry has to say about these literal words. So yeah, no interpretation in the literal. The want, interpretive in a way that is still supported by that literal, supported by that text.
And I found, I promise I'm not going to ride your coattails on all these questions.
Yeah.
But I found actually where this really is illustrated nicely, Sam, and for everyone else, is in those moments in which a character is doing a direct address to the audience, because oftentimes actors get into their head about who they're talking to, and they forget that, especially in a theatrical production, talking to the audience is a convention of theater used for theater for very specific reasons. And so by not interpreting who the character's talking to, by actually looking in the text, you can gain understanding as to is the writer substituting the audience for a character who's not appearing, or is the writer breaking the fourth wall? Are they using that convention, and why are they doing that? And so I think that's a really powerful way to illustrate the difference between your interpretation as an actor versus what you're literally reading as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last time I read your coattails, I promise. Next question. What is the difference between getting lost in your character and understanding your character?
This is a crazy, fantastic question. What is the difference between getting lost in your character and understanding your character? I will preface this by saying that I am just some guy at the end of the day, and so this is my opinion, but do with it what you will. Which is that getting lost in the character, though I suppose I don't fully understand what that means. I do think like getting lost in the character is hopefully an exciting manifestation of us really understanding your character. They sort of go hand in hand, or can. I think it's from understanding our character, from understanding what their desire is, and having for yourself a clear choice that allows you to pursue that on stage or on screen. You can pursue that with a sort of spirit of reckless abandon. And in that spirit of reckless abandon, you are lost in your character. You are lost in your choice. You are lost in your action. And that's about as lost in the character as I would love to be, and I think we should all strive to be. It's like living in that act before you think place. I think the idea, the hope, though it might not always be the case, is that both of these things can go hand in hand.
Great, thank you. Next question. How are actions different, and actions is in quotes, how are actions different from objectives?
Great question. I would say, at least the way that most people use the word objective, has to do with the want. So it is the want because it's plot driven. It is what drives your character. It is what your character is striving for or seeking or desires on a conscious or subconscious level. And so that the question that takes us further than that, further than the objective, and further than just acting the want, is finding for ourselves a choice that achieves that objective, a choice that is ours, the actors alone. Actions are for us, objectives are for our character.
Great, thank you. Yeah, great. Next question. Sorry, I was contemplating would I ride your coattails, but you don't need my opinion.
Ride them. I'm into it.
Well, I just to bounce off of what you were saying is that I think the biggest difference being is that objective can sometimes get dangerously close to interpretation. Whereas action gives you something to do. You know, I would say that what actors have in spades over a lot of other people is deep emotional intelligence. And sometimes we can get too smart for ourselves and too smart for our characters, and we can get in front of it. And so that's where, and I'm sure everyone here has had this moment where you start leading the piece as opposed to allowing the piece to lead you. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do is to allow the piece to lead you, for you to be open to the piece in the moment to lead you wherever it's going to lead you. A great analogy, I think Scott Ziegler, one of the founders of the school, said this, which is the script is a river and the character and the dialogue is the stream. And your job as an actor is to enjoy the ride. And I always found that interesting analogy. Sam, there's a couple of questions here. I'm going to they're all asking kind of the same thing, which is, would you mind explaining the as if again? Some people are saying they're a little bit iffy on what the as if is. Would you mind explaining that just a little bit more, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is, it's one of the harder things to sort of grasp of the 4 questions. The as if, like the question itself is, what is that action like to me? It's as if. Like the as if, what we saw Lily and Ian talking out just then is a hypothetical scenario. It is something that could conceivably happen in your life in which you would play this action all the way. The thing that is super important when it comes to the as if is this idea of something that could conceivably happen in your life. It is not something that is drawn from memory. It's not something that has happened. The reason that we don't draw on memory when it comes to the as if is that we know how it went. We know how memories went. We know how it completed itself. And you also feel a certain way about it. That just is the case with our memories. We lock them to an emotion or several emotions, and we know how they completed themselves. The thing that is exciting and brings potential with an as if is that it's something that could happen in which we do not know what the outcome is. And so we can talk out this as if, talk out this hypothetical scenario in hopes of achieving this action. It gives us an opportunity to go somewhere and go into that somewhere that is somewhat unknown. It rides the line of your personal reality and imagination. It's something that could happen. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I want to say about that. At the end of the day, it's not something that we talk out, for hours and hours to sort of get us into any sort of state or any sort of feeling. That's not at all what it is. It is a mnemonic device. By the end of the day, it is one thought, one ask to another person that tells us, yes, this is how I pursue this action. It tells us, oh yes, this is what it feels like when my body is desiring to achieve this goal. When you think of a right as if, it should give you this feeling of like, oh, I really want to go do that. I really want to go put this person in their place. It should inspire sort of your gut, not so much your brain, but like as ifs are sort of physical, hypothetical, imaginary scenarios that could happen.
Great. Let's see. Looking through some of these. Someone asked, a couple of people asked this question, and once again, if I'm not getting your question specifically, please understand that some of you are all asking the same kind of question in different ways. Can an actor trained in practical aesthetics work with an actor or a director not trained in practical aesthetics, and how do they do that?
Yeah, fantastic question. Yes, absolutely. at the end of the day, after this vocabulary has become something that has been habitualized in your body, it is a personal process, right? It is a way that we take text and distill it down to a choice that makes sense for us. And when we're working with an actor or a director, that doesn't work and that doesn't understand necessarily the vocabulary of practical aesthetics, you can still talk about what are the character's desires. What are we trying to achieve in this scene? And if a director gives you a note, it's about finding for yourself, okay, is this note about the want? Is it changing my idea of what my character desires in the scene, or are we still in agreement as to what that want is? And so is this note something that's telling me a different kind of behavior that I need to approach this want in which case that's a different action choice that you make for yourself. Any technique worth its salt is one that becomes a tailor-made personal process and is not one that you necessarily need to subject your fellow castmates or your director with in, but it allows you to have a vocabulary for yourself that you can translate when in conversation with other folks who don't work in the same way.
Yeah, and I would say if you find a director who even wants to have that conversation with you, that's rare, and good on you, have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Don. When you have two-person scenes to do and one scene partner keeps dropping out, should a director push for the one actor who has kept up the work and shown up to give actors notes on every line and put their frustration onto them? Can the actor decide to draw the line on the work that cannot go further until another actor is in place to play off of? I read that raw. As you can tell, my cold reading skills are not great. I guess the question being is if you're working in a scene and one actor is not pulling their weight, at what point do you, the actor, or the director step in?
Great question. Oh, what do you think, Chris? I sort of feel like
I mean, while you're thinking, Sam, I can tell you that professionally speaking, that has never happened to me. I have never been on a set or in a play in which the people did not show up to work. I had one experience once, which worked out in my favor. I was shooting a commercial, and one of the actors just was not prepared properly. And everyone sees it. I mean, you don't need to really say it because everyone saw it. And that person was dismissed from the set. And the reason it worked out was that this person was a similar type to me, so I ended up becoming the lead in the commercial.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, great. I guess like that anecdote just made me think of what my actual answer was, which is, I guess don't worry about it because it sounds like that person's about to get fired very soon.
Yeah, and if it's a classroom situation, you just run your own race. Don't worry about them. It will be very apparent to everyone that they're not prepared, and that's not your problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's not your problem.
I think maybe let's take one more question and then call it, because we're at 1 o'clock at this point. Yeah.
Let me see. Let me look through. As I'm looking through these questions, everyone, one quick question is, do we have classes online? We do have classes online. I'm going to put my email in the chat so you can send me an email if you have any further questions. Let's see. Sorry about this. Here's a really quick question, Sam. Let's do 1.5 questions because I think this is a really fast answer. How much latitude should actors have to change dialogue?
How much, sorry, say it again?
How much latitude should actors have to change dialogue?
0. 0, absolutely 0. I mean, okay, layered, sorry. It seems that it is more of a practice to allow dialogue to shift in a way that allows it to feel natural in the mouth of the speaker when it comes to film and television, though that is changing. When it comes to the world of theater, it is first and foremost a literary medium. The play is the thing. The play is the primary thing. a playwright slaved away somewhere with a fifth of Jack to make sure that the ums and the uhs were all written in the right place. It is our responsibility to rise to those ums and those uhs written in the right place. I would say the responsible and hardworking actor is word perfect and does not change, because at that point you are playwriting, and that is not your job unless you are the playwright.
And then this is the last question. And once again, if we didn't get to your questions, I'm so sorry. We are short on time. Once again, I will send you an email, or I'll put my email in the chat as Sam is answering this next question. And then any other questions or any questions you may have about Atlantic or classes at Atlantic, feel free to email me. And that last question is, I think this is a really interesting one, because some of the rest of the questions, Sam, are a little bit about technique issues, but I think that this was a really interesting question for us to talk about, especially given what we've talked about. How does an actor behave truthfully while navigating a culture that expects an artist to be moral?
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's a big spicy meatball. I thought I would throw that your way.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. Chris, I'll let you begin.
Well,
you have a thought?
yeah, I have a thought. All I can tell you is from my own personal experience. I was in a play once. I'll talk about two brief shows that I did. One is I did a show in which my character, it was a Lanford Wilson show, and my character was described as being dynamic, attractive, deadly, and magnetic. And none of those are things that I attributed to myself. And he was like a small town preacher. And I didn't attribute any of those to myself. I actually questioned why the director even cast me in that part. And eventually I let go of my own fear of playing the part, and just understood that it wasn't about how I felt about myself, because rarely do people walk around thinking of themselves as dangerous and attractive. This is what people saw in this character, who wasn't me. And the reason I bring that up is that it goes into the second experience I had, where I played a character who was extremely racist. And I had a lot of concern that by playing it truthfully and by playing it honestly, that it was going to put me in a really bizarre backstage relationship with the other actors, or a tense relationship, or that honestly that the audience wouldn't be able to tell that that wasn't me. And that's where you have to lean on your director and your support, because we ended up having a lot of dialogue with the other actors about the character. And it was one of these things where we all knew intellectually that this was a character that I was playing, but it took conversation, because you are going to sometimes be faced with, as an actor, things that are going to make you feel uncomfortable. You have a choice to say, no, I'm not going to do that part, and turn it down. In this case, I was excited to play the part, but it was challenging and it was very dicey. And so I think that is where you have to lean on your backstage support staff, and you have to lean on your fellow actors, and you have to kind of come to it with an open heart and be willing to have a lot of conversations that are going to make you uncomfortable, because ultimately the point of that character was to illustrate the wrongness of that character. It was to illustrate the wrongness of their thoughts and their beliefs. And the only way to do that was to play it truthfully and honestly, which is, this character I was playing did not think they were wrong. They did not think their beliefs were abhorrent. They believed them. And that's the only way to do it, is to be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's making sure that we as artists are choosing stories that we feel are telling the right story. And that's up to you as an actor and as an artist to make sure that you are putting yourself only in situations where those are the stories that you're working on. And then if that is the goal, if that is the journey, is to tell that kind of a story, then the question for yourself is, okay, how do I get on the side of the character that I'm portraying in order to tell this story? How do I, again, find the action that is the intersection between me and this person, so I can play honestly what they believe in? And understanding, again, through difficult conversations, like Chris was saying, through difficult and clarifying and community building conversations, making sure that you and the team that you're with, that the cast, that the crew, that, you know, the entire team is in an understanding that that pursuit that you will go with reckless abandon on stage or on screen is actually in the pursuit of telling this story, a story worth telling. But I think, yes, it's up to us as actors to make sure that we only let ourselves tell stories worth telling. That's up to you.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add, Sam, before we leave, is that I sometimes, my background's more in comedy, and so I will say that sometimes we enter into this false equivalency where we say, well, the audience isn't allowed to be offended, and the performer isn't allowed to offend. And the thing is the audience is allowed to be offended. The audience is allowed to be engaged. They're allowed to feel what they're going to feel about the piece that you have done. And you as the artist are allowed to say what you want and need to say as the artist. And you have to kind of walk into it understanding that, is that I'm being given the privilege, and we in the United States have a privilege to say what we want to say on stage. And the audience has the privilege to feel what they want to feel and react in the way that they want to react. And then approach people with compassion and humanity. Because remember, ultimately, the reason Atlantic was founded was to remind people of our shared humanity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks. That's beautiful.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Ian and Lily. Thank you to Backstage. Thank you to everyone. Once again, so sorry if we didn't get to your question. I will put my email one more time in the email or in the chat. So if you have any questions, you can reach out. A couple of you asked some questions specific to Sam, so feel free to reach out to me and I can pass those on to Sam and Ian and Lily. And thank you all so much for being so attentive and being here and giving us your time.
And thank you, Chris, for playing MC for this session. Sam, it really was an incredible webinar and educational experience for me, for everyone here. We had well over 300 people sitting in and definitely learned a lot. So thank you for your time, your wisdom, and everyone tuning in right now. Stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and best of luck out there. Thanks for tuning in.